Good morning, everyone. So we've got a couple minutes. So we will sit back and let other people log in. We had about 180 register. There's only 57 on. So I'm going to go ahead and mute for a minute and allow everyone to slowly trickle in.
Now what does it say? Looks like there's a bunch of people.
I don't care if I'm muted.
All right, it's 10 a.m. Everybody, good morning. Everybody, as you come in, you're going to come in muted. Please leave it remaining on mute. Throughout the presentation, we'll primarily communicate through the chat. So if you have questions at the end of the presentation, please put them in the chat, or even if we're kind of going along, I will try to keep up on the chat for you guys and see if I can make some answer some questions as we go. It may be difficult to interrupt Mike as he presents, so please bear with us if we don't get to you right away. But we will start in a minute. We've got 88 in. We've got probably another 100 that registered. So we'll give it another sec. I know some folks struggle to get online or just get in the app. So give it a minute and then we'll get started, okay? Thanks. Hey, Mike, are you?
I'm here.
Okay, I just don't see you anymore. And I'm getting reverb from somebody. All right, we crested over 100. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I will start by introducing myself. Some of you know who I am. Some of you have probably a little bit of question mark as to who this guy is talking. My name is Blair Newton. I am the president and CEO of Professional Bayway Management. We put this seminar or webinar together for you guys because we have the Corporate Transparency Act that's kind of reared its ugly head this year. It's not a new law, but it's a law that was being contested, or at least there were entities fighting it on behalf of community associations. And unfortunately, the federal government and the courts have not voted in your favor at the moment. So we're stuck kind of going through the paces to get this handled. The presenter, as I mentioned in the number of emails that have gone out pertaining to this webinar, is Michael Price. Michael Price and his firm, for those of you that have been with us over a year, his firm typically does the taxes for your associations, the year-end taxes, the tax return. So that's how we've been involved with the firm. We reached out to them about this very issue, and they had already started to put together a program to assist the associations with filing. So he's going to go over that. He's going to tell you a little bit about the CTA, what it means, how it works, how it affects you as a board member, and how we're going to handle it going forward. You will, every board member, unfortunately, is going to have to participate. We've got 115 on here. I estimate that we probably manage about 340 board members. So we've got roughly a third in attendance. So if you are representing your association or you don't see your fellow board members on this call from your association, please let them know what occurred today. I'm going to be sending out a recorded version of this shortly after the meeting. Last time it took about an hour or two for it to be transcribed and put into a digital format. I will wait likely until tomorrow morning because I'm also going to send you Mike's presentation, and those board members that haven't attended will also get a copy of that by way of email. So everyone will have the information they need to participate or to get this done, especially after Mike's presentation. You'll understand it a little bit better. So I'm going to, if there are no further questions, go ahead and turn the stage over to Mr. Price, let him do his presentation, and then I will chime in the end. All right, Mike, it's your show.
All right, thank you, Blair. Good morning, everyone. We're going to start by looking at a broad overview of the Corporate Transparency Act, and then we'll go into some of the finer details as Blair talked about. One moment here, and I'm going to share my screen for our presentation. And if everybody could let me know that they see this particular PowerPoint. Can we see that one? Can I get a confirmation from anybody?
Yep, looks good. So you're in editor view. Do you want to put it in presentation view or do you want to leave it there?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me all that much, but
okay.
Let me go with where's the play button? There we go. So hopefully still look okay.
You're good. You're good.
All right. Yeah. So starting with the Corporate Transparency Act reporting requirement. The Corporate Transparency Act is new in 2024. Basically, everybody who would be on this particular phone call or presentation would fall under the category of an established business that was established prior of January 1 of this particular year, meaning you have until December 31st of this year to file your initial report. Now, you say which entities are required to comply with this particular law, and that would be entities realistically organized within the U.S. and inside of a state. So if you filed any kind of organizational documents with the Secretary of State or a similar office, then you would be required. There are some exemptions. We'll go through those. Some other companies that quote unquote don't have to comply if they don't file with the state or they're foreign, but nothing we overly need to concern ourselves with in this particular call. This is just more like broad information. These are the categories that I was briefly talking about. These are the exemptions in publicly traded large companies, tax-exempt entities.
Mike, I don't mean to interrupt, but you haven't moved from the opening slide, so it's still on your first slide.
Oh, well, yeah.
You're probably presenting on a different
screen.
Yeah. So we're only seeing the editor mode, not the presentation mode.
Can you see if I move them now?
So what you'll need to do, Mike, is stop the share, and then there you go. Now you're good. You're good. You're good.
Okay, we're just gonna leave it in this mode. We'll leave it in editor mode, whatever.
Okay.
So I'll go back to the slide. So roughly, like I said, this is a Transparency Act, January 1 of this year. If your entity was already in existence, you have until December 31st of this year to report a beneficial ownership report with they call them FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. So entities created within the state or tribe, whatever it may be, if they file basically any kind of articles of incorporation with that state, then they're required to complete this particular report. Now, like we talked about, if you don't or you're foreign, they're exempt, and there's other exemptions such as these categories. There are 23 categories of exemptions that are listed right now with FinCEN. They include things like banks, publicly traded brokers, exempt entities. This is not an all-inclusive list. This is just what they've said because they're already highly regulated. And then there's also large operating entities, meaning if they employ more than 20, they have more than 5 million. They don't have to report as well. So as you can see, they're really circling the drain on this particular reporting requirement on small business. Okay, that's the bulk of what they're looking for. So the big thing is that they've actually specifically answered this question in their guidance from FinCEN. It said, well, are homeowners associations reporting companies? Well, in the government's infinite wisdom, they said it depends. So if a homeowners association filed an incorporation document with the state, in this particular case, Florida or any other state for that matter, or tribe, then they would be considered a reporting entity for FinCEN and have to comply with filing that initial beneficial ownership information report with FinCEN by the end of this year. Okay. Now, they do have some caveats. Say if you're not incorporated with the state, I got to be honest, I don't know many HOAs that are not incorporated with the state. They also have guidance about if you are a 501c4 organization for social welfare. Once again, I've not met many HOAs that would fall into this category, meaning in terms of to qualify for a 501c4 social welfare, traditional homeowner associations, meaning we have pooled resources together to take care of our property, our maintenance. There's no public interest. Therefore, you're not going to qualify for a 501c4 organization. Okay. There are 501c4 HOAs that we have seen in the past where they have a public interest, whether it be a field or something that could qualify them. But in generalities here, we're talking 99.9% of HOAs are not going to fall under this exemption that the FinCEN has given us, that they are not 501c4s and they are not an entity that hasn't filed with the state or regulatory of their particular governing body. So with all that being said, HOAs going to have to file this initial report with FinCEN on the beneficial ownership information. Okay. And so the next question people usually ask, besides what are the reporting requirements, is what is a beneficial owner? Okay. Those are two caveats. They're rather broad from FinCEN. They are anyone who exercises substantial control over a reporting company, i.e., board members or senior officers or any of that nature, or anyone who owns or controls at least 25% of the reporting company. Now that's more geared not on this call, as you can think of a small business, if you have a family business or any of these kind of natures. That's what they're talking about. So realistically, for this presentation, we're going to circle the drain of the substantial control of the reporting company. Okay. And like I said, that's board of directors, management companies, senior officers, things of that nature. So now we touched on it briefly before, but when you have to file. So most HOAs that I deal with have not been started in 2024. Those are different deals that they started in 2024. They had 90 days with an incorporation to get the deal done on this initial report. So most everyone that I deal with is an existing entity. They were created before January 1st of this particular year, and they must file before the end of this year. We're putting a hard deadline of 12/31. I know it said January 1, but nonetheless, that's what they say, the letter of the law. We try not to push it. New Year's Eve we figure is good enough than New Year's Day. So also, another compliance deal that is very important to remember when filing these things. So this is an initial report when it comes to the Corporate Transparency Act. This initial report for the beneficial ownership information is the first report. It's due for entities by the end of this year. Now, once you file with FinCEN, that's your initial report. It's not an ongoing thing like your annual report or your tax return in nature. So that's what makes this a little bit more unique and difficult to follow. Is once you file the initial report, you only need to file again if there were changes or inaccuracies to the initial report. So this initial report is what we're talking about now. And then if there were changes. So changes are broad. We don't have a ton of guidance on what changes mean. We have taken the stance of, if there is a change in one of the owners, i.e. a board or an officer or someone at the management company, or there was a change in their particular information that they initially put on the report, those would constitute a 30 days to change the report. So that's a completely different report. It's a change report, not an initial report, and therefore it's a completely different engagement than what we're talking about with this initial report. Now, what information is going to go on this first report? The company, from a company standpoint, is pretty basic information: full name, trade name, business address, IRS tax number, pretty standard stuff, kind of what we just kind of give on your tax return in generalities. Nothing you need to be overly concerned about. Now, what has to be reported for the beneficial owner? What has to be reported for you guys, right? There's a form that we fill out. It will include your name, your date of birth, your address, and then a unique number. Now, most people were concerned when this first came out that this unique identifying number would be everyone's social security number. That is not the case, folks. I do not need people's social security numbers. What I will need, though, is right here, as we said, the two most common examples. It is a driver's license or a passport number, okay? Now, on top of that particular identifying number, we also need a color image of the document to attach to the report. I know they double down like that. I don't know why, but they have. And if there's particular, I know there's might be particular board members that might not have a state issued driver's license or a U.S. passport. We will have to work through that particular on a case by case basis. But like I said, the most common item that we've been doing with reporting is really getting people to state the issue driver's license or passport and using that number and that particular image and putting that in the report. So once again, the big thing is your name, your address, your date of birth, and a driver's license or passport. It's not your social security number, folks. So now people say, what is this? And do I have to do it? In my opinion, yes. Penalties for not willfully complying with the United States government and the requirement on BOI through FinCEN. It is a criminal and civil penalty of up to $500 a day, up to $10,000 in potentially 2 years of jail time based on the risk of non-compliance with this particular report. Now, to Blair's point of there are people challenging the compliance of this in courts, but it is most most people's opinions in the industry as well as mine that the court nor the government is going to deal with this before that December 31st, 2024 initial reporting deadline. It could be struck down eventually, but that's not going to be the case here. So what would happen next in terms of doing the report? Like we briefly discussed, your management company's contacted us. We have sent them the engagement letters for every single board that we do a tax return for or they manage. On that engagement letter spells out everything we will do and provide for the initial reporting of this BOI. What will need to be done will need to be, the final page, there's a place to initial, sign, and date, and this needs to be done by someone on the board and then sent back to your management company. Once the management company has the engagement letter, they will give it to us as well as the contact information to your particular board, which we will send a document request list to you so we can complete the initial filing of the BOI for you. And also with the caveat of, like we talked about, one of the big things I want someone to take away, this is an initial report. So if there are changes, your board, your management company, as well as us, would need to be notified fairly immediately because we only have 30 days to change the report. So with that, I see questions are flooding in. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Blair. One moment.
I'm trying. I'm rapid typing. I'm trying. I know most of the answers, so I'm
I
trying
see
to
it out of
just
the corner of my
rapidly
eye, and I
type.
was trying my best not to read it while I was trying to read the other screen. So, anywho, we'll tackle those as they are.
So thanks, Mike. I appreciate you doing that. I think that was pretty. We're going to try and limit this call because I don't want to bore the living daylights out of everybody. But to some of the questions I've answered, and I'll kind of read down for those of you that aren't able to read the chat, because if you're on your phones or what have you, it's kind of hard to keep up with it. So majority of what was asked, Mike answered. How is this going to impact Canadian board members? Mike kind of spoke to that. Those board members will likely have to work with Mike and his firm directly to get whatever the necessary documents are concerned to them. Obviously, the driver's license won't work, but because you are acting as a board member in the U.S., you'll have to comply. So we're going to have to go down that road and figure that out. Mike, I'm going to ask you to kind of address this one. Larry asked what protections are in place for our personal information. If you can speak a little bit about that, please do, because I couldn't answer that question. Thankfully, it's just the driver's license or a passport, but I know there's some concern.
Right, and so Larry, to answer your question, I guess let me answer it, I guess, in two parts. One, people say, what's going to happen to this information? So the FinCEN has spoke to, they are going to use this information to work with local law enforcement. So they're going to share the data kind of downward, I guess you could say. What that all will mean, I don't know. But safeguards is one of the concerns that has been raised in the litigation of the data of, well, the federal government may do a great job of safeguarding it, may not, who knows. But it is going to be transmitted to local law enforcement, and then it's one of those deals. They don't make any assurances. They tell you how it's going to be shared, but not assurances on how it's going to be protected. And they don't really give, other than they're just going to share to local law enforcement. That's about the extent of what they say they're going to do. They don't say how or what or any of that nature, where the data is going to be stored. None of that. None of that information is available.
All right, so it looks like we've exactly what I thought might happen is happening, which is the mass exodus of if I resign before the end of the year, do I have to do this? And I think the answer is probably no.
Probably no.
Yeah.
If you resign before the initial report, then the answer would be no. You're not going to have to comply. It's going to be the composition on that date of the initial report. So, if you file a report on September 1, but you resign on August 31st, then you weren't on the board to report on September 1, of that nature. So.
Mike, someone asked, and I said about $500 per association, but I think it was less when you mentioned it. What was the number?
Yeah, we were doing depending. It was 275 to 325 was our office's fee range on this.
Okay, all right, yeah, and guys, PBM's not handling any of this data, so we won't be tacking on any handling charge. We're simply supplying the documents. So if he says it's 275 to 325, depending on how many members, that's going to be the rate. So I quoted 500, not remembering, but it looks like you're getting the blue light special, so you're good.
Yes.
Yeah.
We tried to keep this to just an hour's worth of work to our firm and a rate accordingly with that one through the organization. So a blended rate.
All right. So Maria Campbell asks, how will this information help the government with any problem? So Mike and I have talked about this. It's been a topic in the circles as to what this is, and I don't want to call it the funny part, but the funny part is this is all kind of put together to stop terrorism, if I recall. They're trying to, apparently, Mike explained to me that it's in Europe. It's been in Europe for a very long time. They're trying to track small money transfers or the funding of terrorist groups by understanding what businesses are in play and who's running said businesses. As Mike mentioned, we're hopeful that this is a one-time thing, that by the time next year rolls around or when you guys are up for re-election, hopefully this is no longer a thing for HOAs, condos, and co-ops. We're hoping that they listen to the lobbyists this year. We're hoping that the government understands that you guys are not really running a business that could fund anything, let alone terrorism. But again, this is the feds. We're kind of stuck. You're kind of stuck, and I hate to say it because I know it's a volunteer position and I feel for you. Unfortunately, we all have to do it. I have to file on your behalf as the management company, us as a management company, which makes sense because we're a business. We had to file. But we're on every single association. We've got to sign all those documents too. So we're just as exposed as you are. And I get it. It's a volunteer position and it's not nice. But if we didn't tell you what needed to be done, we'd be failing you. So we thought putting this together would help our associations at least have a path of least resistance. If you and your association, Mr. or Mrs. board members or Miss board members or whatever it is, if you decide you don't want to take advantage of using Mike and his firm, that's totally fine. But you'll have to do it yourselves. So my thought process is it's better to kind of hand it to you on a silver platter so it's more effective and you can get it taken care of. But if you decide, then you simply just don't sign the engagement letter and we're all good. What's going to happen with those engagement letters, Blair? So what our thought process is we will send the engagement letter to the board president, just like we do the tax returns, or actually the tax returns sometimes go to the treasurer, but it'll go to the board president. And if the association decides to engage, you'll sign it, send it back to us. Likely it'll be back to the manager that sent it to you initially. We will then provide it to Michael along with the board member emails and contact information that we have on file. So once that occurs, they will then reach out to the board members, give them, I'm guessing, a form to fill out along with what they need in a PDF with the driver's license and/or passport. You'll send it back to them and they'll work directly with you guys to get it done. We're August. I tried to start it really early to give everybody a little bit of time to gather and to get this done. So we've got a few months to do it, but I don't want to be sitting December 15th while we're approving the last bunch of budgets and still have this hanging over your heads. So we tried to get a jump on it once we understood that you were going to be stuck doing it, because we wanted to wait till this quarter of the year, or at least the latter part of the year, to see if they overturn it, which they did not. So here we are. We're forced to do it. Thank you, federal government, but this is where we're at. All right. Is there anything else? Let me see.
So let me just answer a couple of these questions, Blair.
Yeah, go for it.
I see one here. Which would I recommend, driver's license or passport number? Honestly, whichever has the furthest expiration date from today that we're going to do the initial report, because kind of just to echo what Blair just said, we expect it to be repealed one day. And I don't have great guidance on whether or not a driver's license or passport expiration constitutes a change in the data. So that would be the one I would say, whichever has, if one expires in 28 and one expires in 29, give me the one that expires in 29, just to have the most amount of runway for them to eventually get this out of the system. A lot of these questions that say, do we have an understanding of why, what information or why this has been implemented is, it is really just, they say it's for terrorism and money laundering. That's about all the guidance they're going to give us. And they want to know who's behind these small businesses. So, and do we need all the board members' IDs? That is correct. We will need every board member's either driver's license or passport. And if they don't have a U.S. passport or a state issued driver's license, like I said, we will be more than happy to work with that on a case by case basis on some other forms of acceptable ID. But we just did the broad thing we use are the driver's license and the passports.
All right. Do we have anything else, folks? I'm just gonna say out loud what I just typed back to Debbie Heston. So she asked, Michael Quirk asked, when will the letters go out? So what I was mentioning back in the chat, Mike's firm already produced the engagement letters, I believe, for everybody. So we've been sitting on them waiting for this meeting, because if I just shot these out with a written explanation, it would be confusing. So we wanted to have this meeting with you folks to explain it verbally, what was going on, give you a presentation as to what this was. And then likely what we'll do is send out the engagement letters to the presidents and or whoever the designated point of contact is next week for signature. And then once we get those back, like I said, Mike's firm will reach out to you and start the process of getting all of this filed. So we're probably looking at, mid-September, late September, that we'd like to kind of have a lot of this done, and then work on October, November with the folks that are late to the game. It looks like Melanie's got a question. Melanie, if you've got a question, go for it.
My question is, what happens if a board member moves within 30 days of filing the form?
Are you saying 30 days after are you saying after the initial report if a board member moves?
Yes.
And Melanie specifically sells, like is out of the association, or just moves their residence?
I suppose both.
Okay.
That goes back to that, like we talked about, that's a different report. That's an update. That's an updating of the initial filing. Okay. And so that has to occur within 30 days of such a change. So if a board member moves and gets off the board, then you have to update the initial report.
What happens if they move or sell after the 30 days?
No, it's not. There's an event, whatever the event when they no longer are on the board, whatever that date is. Say that's the first of the month. We'd have to the 30th to deal with it. It's not. It's an ongoing process, I guess you could say. It's just whatever the date of the effective change is, we would have 30 days. So it's not like, oh, they put the condo up for sale, they got 30 days, or they've moved, we've got 30 days. It would be them actually coming off the board. Once they came off the board and were replaced with somebody, we would have 30 days from that event. Does that answer it?
Yes. And by the way, Blair, the chat feature is not working for some people.
Oh
Okay.
gosh, I wouldn't know that because it never stops. So I'm not, maybe those on their phone, I'm not sure. So okay,
No,
well we've got pardon?
I'm on a laptop. My
Weird.
chat feature is not working, and neither is Melena's.
Okay, well, on that, so we've got 1, 2, 3 questions with their hands raised. So we're going to go Barb first, then Milena, and then Scott. So Barb, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. I just have a question. So can the board file these forms themselves, or do they have to go through an accounting firm to do it? And if once we send in the initial forms and there's changes, do we still have to go through an accounting firm to do that, or can we do that ourselves?
No. So I mentioned a little bit earlier, and I know there's been a lot of information. If the board so chooses to do it on their own, you guys are more than welcome to do so. This is just pure convenience and kind of just giving it to the client. So you as the client have the ability to kind of get it done through the CPA. Or if you want to go on FinCEN yourself and do it, that's totally okay with us as well. We just want to kind of give you the ability to get this done. This isn't a function of the management company. This is just a setup by us to get it done, as easily as possible. So by all means, if your association chooses, please just respond to the engagement letter email saying no, thank you, and we'll keep that on file and we won't worry about it.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Elena, you're next. If you're talking, I need you to unmute yourself. I wish I could, but I can't.
Here we go. Okay,
There you go.
there you go.
There
Okay,
you go.
if the board member is not a resident of the complex, they live somewhere else, and if they're still a board member, but their resident address changes, is that considered a change?
Yes.
So anytime somebody changes address, they're going to need to file a change within the 30 days. And is that up to the board to do that, or the management company? Does the board member go to the management company and then they go to you to do it, or how does that work?
If you engaged us to do an initial report, what we talk about in our next communication with you is if there were these particular changes, to please notify our office within 14 days of those changes, so we'd have the appropriate time to do an updated report. We know it's pushing it, but it's the best we can do under those circumstances. But in my opinion, and granted, there's not great guidance on this, you do have to disclose name, address, date of birth, and then give the identifying document. So if anything on any of that changes, obviously your date of birth isn't going to change, but if your address or that document expires, I believe they're going to call that a change, and an update would have to be, the updated report would have to be done within 30 days
Okay, and how about,
of that event.
I just have another question. If you already have filed a CTA because you have an LLC,
Okay.
would you have a different unique number, or would you have the same number?
You mean you filed one because you already had your own LLC, so you use your driver's license number or your passport number on that particular filing? You're saying would you change it for this filing? Is that what you're asking? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yes.
No, it's still going to be, so your particular personal information, your identifying number wouldn't change, right? So if you used a driver's license last time, you use a driver's license this time, obviously the driver's license number didn't change. The only thing that changed was the kind of the page before it, where it gives the entity information, right?
Okay, so how about if you didn't use your driver's license and you already filed, then, and we're doing driver's license or passport now? Is that a problem? If you have two
No, it's
different
not a
numbers,
problem.
you can have two different numbers?
Yeah, because I mean, in theory, one person doing a reporting on multiple entities could use multiple different types of numbers. I.e.,
Okay.
they could use their driver's license on this one or their passport on this one, or I've seen other people that go a step further and they go get a specific FinCEN ID number, and they'll use that over and over. That's a different conversation if someone wanted to do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Scott, you're next.
Hey, Blair, for Hidden Lagoon specifically, three different associations, does that mean three different reports and 3 times the cost?
Yes, yes, and yes. Did I say that 3 times? Yes.
Ouch, ouch, and ouch.
Sorry, man. It's just your setup. It's just not great.
I'll have to do something about that in the future. Thanks much.
No problem. Al?
Yes, Mike, all this information that we are required to give is PII, personal identification information. What are you folks
Yes.
doing to ensure that that information cannot be hacked? Is this information going to be encrypted?
On our end, you
Yep,
mean?
on your end and at the federal government level. What are they doing so that our PII, because this information, you don't need much in order for someone to assume my identity.
Right, and I think it was not too long ago. I read a story that there was thoughts that every social security number of every United States citizen was hacked. So from our end, our digital security is this will go into our file management software, which is housed through our software provider of Wolters Kluwer's, which is a very large national company, tax provider company. That's where that data is housed, and it's protected, encrypted as best they can with the product suite that they offer us, as well as we have our normal safeguards of protecting our internal servers. The I forget how many softwares we softwares and subscriptions that we provide, that we subscribe to as well. God willing, we haven't been hacked yet.
That's good. That's good to hear. That you haven't been
It
hacked.
doesn't mean it can't happen in the future, right? So, and most of the things that we do from a tax and a data standpoint is housed out on our software providers' databases. I guess you could sit there and say, and we pay for that protection that they provide on it. In terms of what the United States government's going to do, you got me, man. That's a good question. I hear you, but they haven't given me any assurances of what they're doing with this data, and I think that's why they've seen a lot of one of the aspects of why they've seen a lot of legal challenge on this particular issue. So
Okay. And to ask an additional question about change of address. I know for me, I am a snowbird. Okay. I spend, more than half the year down in Clearwater in our condo association. And then I spend less than half the year up here north. So, and so when I do that, when I, travel back up north, during the summer months, I mean, for me, my permanent address is still Clearwater, Florida. That's my permanent address. So I don't consider me moving back here, during the summer months, a change because my permanent address is still Clearwater, Florida. So my question is, when I move up here during the summer months, do I have to notify that as a change in address?
no, only a change in the initial document. So like let's just say you gave the driver's license and it showed that Clearwater address, right?
Yep.
As long as you don't change that Clearwater address, the time that you spend between doesn't matter. It's just that original address cannot change, or or the driver's license expires, right? Because that would be a change in the document that was provided.
Okay, fine. And you say that the engagement letters are going to be going out next week. Now, for us, for our association, we have our annual um, board meeting, for any changes to our board. We have it in November. So I guess we can wait till November to give you all the information if there should be a change in the makeup of our board, correct?
I would recommend, if you did that, if you do have one of those meetings scheduled here in the third or fourth quarter, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't wait much further past that, just because, like I talked about with Blair, it's one of those things. November and December get crowded in generalities just because of the holidays and the work schedule for people. So, but if you have a meeting, in September, October, early November, I would say, yeah, where the board composition is going to change, you might want to wait till then, to to say, okay, these are going to be the documents provided. You know, prior to that, I would say, you know, to the point of if you are going to engage us or you're not going to engage us, just so we know from a scope standpoint to maybe do that in the next couple weeks. But in terms of waiting for that information, yeah, I would wait till then.
For me, I think it would make sense for all of us to have you to do this for us because you've got the the procedures / system in place to secure our data. Whereas an individual association may not.
We're gonna, like I said, we're gonna do that with our database, same place where we keep all the other sensitive, very sensitive information, right? Because if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, not just HOAs, but our business and our individual clients, we keep a vast amount of sensitive data.
Okay.
And our software provider knows that we have names, addresses, socials, bank accounts, financial data, everything you could possibly think of on someone's life. So.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much.
No problem.
All right, Melanie?
Yes, since Stone's Throw is a little unique with our associations, are we just going to file one or are we filing 17?
So, Mike, the way Stone's Throw is set up, they have one set of board of directors that oversees, they've got 17 buildings in a master association. Melanie, I'm drawing up, you have one federal ID, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but we produce 18 statements for them each month because they have separate buildings. So they have one set of directors and then building representatives that are not officially on the board. So when we do the SunBiz reporting, just for because you and I talked about this, we report the master board officers, not the 17 reps. So that's what she's asking. Are we gonna have to do 18 of these gosh darn things for them or one, or do you want to look at it and then?
So yeah, I will take a look at it, but in generalities, how many SunBiz reports do we file?
One.
17. One?
One, yep.
And we have one TIN?
Correct.
One TIN.
Yep.
So my off-the-cuff answer would be one. Because this is mostly based on SunBiz report, TIN.
Let's hope. That would be great. That'd be a lot easier and a lot cheaper.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you got TINs for each building and you got SunBiz reports for each building, plan on each building. Or each association. So if you have like 3 or 4 or 5, and they each have a separate tax ID number and they each have a separate EIN, it's going to be one for each of them. If you only have one, that's going to be one. So
guys, everyone on the call. So Scott asked me the same question regarding his association. His association, actually, we do file separate SunBizes for Hidden Lagoon 1, 2, and their general. So that's why the answer I gave him was different than what the answer that we just provided Melanie, because they do file differently.
Right.
So I've got Sue Gilkey, you can go, and then Ellen, I'm going to read. I got your question. Bill Blair, will PBM ride hard on this for Captivas? I need some clarification as to what that is. So after Sue goes, if you don't mind just clarifying, I will be happy to answer that. And then Mike, I want you to think about something. Earlier in the question, someone said if the association is going to file on their own, who do they list for PBM? I really didn't think about that. I'm not sure that I want associations doing it on their own and then listing me. I don't really, but we could talk that through as to how that's going to work, because I don't know more than you guys want me handling your stuff. I'm not sure I want you handling mine either. So that's why he's here and I'm not doing it. So we'll have to cross that bridge. If your association decides not to go through the CPA and you're asking me for my information, then I'm going to have the same questions for you as to what you're doing to protect my data. So I think it's probably best you go through the CPA for everybody, but that's my suggestion. Sue Gilkey, go for it.
Hi there. Is this for every board member or just the officers?
Every board member.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really every board member, because that's the standard of that FinCEN is giving, well, FinCEN realistically, let's make no mistake, the United States Treasury is giving us when they talk about, you know, substantial control, right? Or not substantial control, but influence or control, right? And so when you broad that down, if you start cherry picking board members or offices or any of that nature, then I would rather give, I hate to say, the United States government too much information, but based on the risk of non-compliance fines, maybe more is less, right?
Okay,
So,
all right. So, okay, I also have another question. When we have to
Sure.
file a change form, like after our annual membership meeting in February, how much is it going to cost to file the change form?
I haven't, so that is a great question too. I haven't addressed that yet because, knock on wood, I haven't had to do one yet. We're still doing the initial reports, right? I haven't had anybody have a change order yet. So I love to sit there and say, hey, it's not going to be as expensive because I hope the data kind of ports over and I only have to change a couple things. I can do it cheaper than the 1 hour rate kind of deal. But you know, I would, if I was you, and I know budgeting is important and those kind of decisions when you're talking about that, you know, for now, budget to a similar cost. But I will say I'm hoping for the caveat I can do it much cheaper with a change order.
All right, thank you.
Now, but Sue, just to also to clarify one point, so on fees, but there will also be so when you see our engagement letter, it's, gosh, I've forgotten the letter since I've sent it to you. You know, it's 6 or 7 pages long. Just because it's covering that this is an initial report, and that if you do have one of those change reports, you need to notify us, and B, will send you a new engagement letter because it is a completely different type of report. People are like, why are you doing that? Realistically, it's my insurance carrier, folks. You know how they are. So we all got insurance. We all know their games. So the end of the day, when I send that one, and once I've done a couple, I will have a better idea of what the cost will be when we get to that bridge and get to it. And I will keep your management company abreast of what I predict to be the charge on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. I think Milena's next, and then Margaret.
As far as your license, if you use your license, and is the management company going to keep track for us, Blair, of when the licenses expire, or how is that going to work? Will the property management have a tickler file on this, or record it?
So the hard part, Milena, I don't want, you know, what we're trying to avoid by bringing Mike in is you know, he's going to be the point of contact for this stuff. I mentioned, I think it was back to in the chat, which I know you can't see, so I'll talk about it. I'm really hopeful that this goes away in 2025 and we don't have to, you know, beat this one to death. This is just kind of, we're working our way through this. As far as the driver's licenses are concerned, you know, hopefully that person knows their driver's license is expiring or they got a new one. It's going to be relatively clear that they've got to give us or contact Mike if that changes. This is just not a function of the management company. This is it's not been something we've done. So I'm trying to work our way through it and give you guys the tools to take care of it. We're going to have to just work through it. I can't give you an answer right now, Milena, because it's not something I want anything to do with because I'm not going to be housing that information.
Okay.
Mike will. So but as far as the question was, you know, is PBM going to help us stay on track with the changes? When we have an annual meeting, we're certainly going to bring it up. In fact, I think on the latest first notice we put out, we're making mention of this very thing that board members understand that it's part of the CTA and you know, we're got to do this. So we're going to try and keep it up front and in front of you guys so everybody knows they need to get this done. But again, it's not going through us and for a multitude of reasons, but Al made mention of it and Mike addressed it. I don't want the data. I don't want you guys being concerned about the handling of said data. that's why I set this up for everybody. So you don't have to be concerned about the encryption or what we're doing. I mean, Michael's firm, as he mentioned, handles people's personal finances, certainly far more than just their social. So I feel much more comfortable with them having that data. We have encrypted stuff too, but theirs is going to be at a much higher level than us. So that's why we're doing this with them in particular, or at least setting up for you guys with them.
Okay, so if somebody's license expires and they don't tell anybody, what's the fine associated with that and who pays that? The HOA?
Yeah. That's how I understand it. It's a fine to the HOA, Milena. Yeah, not to the individual. Mike would know better, but I know there's fines. I don't, so they can't put the HOA in jail, but there's mention of jail time on here, so that may be the person. So they can't put so-and-so in jail, but they could probably put, you know, the board member. I'm not sure. We haven't crossed that bridge, but that's what it says.
And to piggyback on what he's saying, so what we're going to attempt to do while we're doing this is, and what we've kind of done with some of the filings that we've already done for small businesses in our particular practice, is we are putting a database together with the type of document that was provided in the expiration date. So we'll have a name. We're working with our software provider because they're offering a product suite for this, and we're in the beta test of it right now. It's the same document storage and same people that would be storing our documents that is providing this particular solution. So we're seeing if it's a viable solution. So we're hoping that, whatever XYZ association, they provided this kind of data and the license expires on, October 25th. We say, okay, we can send out a reminder to them that says, hey, but that we hope to have that. So we hope to have that solution before the end of the year. After we do the initial reports and we put that data into that solution. So far what we've seen, it's a good solution. But the big thing on that one is it will track expiration dates, right? But it's not going to track if somebody moves or goes off the board, right? There's no way that software will understand any of that kind of data.
Right, so that's awesome though. That's awesome what you're doing, the solution, because when we have 20 board members, and I'm sure people aren't going to remember when they go get a new driver's license to tell somebody. So that's one of those inherent chief concerns that my office had when we started talking about this, just for anybody in general, right? If there's some sort of ownership change, there's some kind of people. I have a hard enough time getting people in here to do their taxes, for a lot of clients once a year, let alone when they sell their house and they move and they come tell me about it, a year later. So, it's not going to track any of that kind of stuff, but whatever document they do give us, we are able to say, oh, hey, this is what type of document we got. And then this is its expiration date. Right. So that part at least gives us some minute information to at least help people. But one of the things that I strongly encourage, kind of how, I can't remember, maybe it was Al earlier or somebody, we talked about, we do a board meeting, we change composition, blah, blah, blah. That when a board composition changes, that's going to be another big topic that's really going to be on the board to notify my office, hey, we've done something. So that, I hope that answers a little bit of what thank you.
We're trying to do at least.
Yes, board change is much easier because everybody on the board knows that. It's just those other ones about we don't have the information on the expiration. So thank you.
Right, and I know board composition only because we were affected in our office. And one of my partners, her husband was on a board and he passed away suddenly, so they had to make a board change. But it's like stuff like that like the software is just not gonna. It's not going to understand. It's not. There's no way for me to effectively track it. There's no third-party vendor solution that I can do to effectively do that. So
I've got a question, Mike, real quick.
Sure.
What about, so do they have to use the resident address that's on their driver's license, or could they just not use their unit address, which unless they sell wouldn't change?
I would stick with whatever address is on the identifying document.
Okay,
because
that's what I was afraid of.
I'm
Okay.
of the belief of they're cross-checking that identifying document to the information that is physically inputted into the form.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought, but I thought I'd ask a question. All right, we've got Margaret, and then I'm going to read off some of the, while Margaret's asking your question, Mike, if you just glance at the chat as well, because there's a couple questions I can't answer.
Okay, all right. Starting with where?
Starting with after my yes.
After your yes. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you. That's good enough for the guy. Thank you.
Margaret, go right ahead.
Thank you, Blair, and thank you
Sure.
for putting this on because I
My
heard
pleasure.
some buzz around it, and I appreciate you putting us in contact with Michael Price. But I'm coming from a point of really zero, and I wanted to kind of understand the process. So when Mike's firm gets this information on the engagement letter that he's going to send out to us, he then manipulates it so that he has the data organized and can give us due dates. But you also file it with a federal entity, not the state entity, not on SunBiz, but a federal entity. And then you're done with it pretty much, unless we have changes. But who has access to it? And or is it shared? I heard someone say it's shared with the local law enforcement. So does the law enforcement have access to those federal files, or what is that information being stored and how is it used after it's sent to the federal government?
So we can't completely attest to how the federal government will store or use your data. This is just what they've given us in the guidance of why are they doing this. And they say, you know, it's for transparency, to reduce fraud, illegal acts, money laundering, other such things, and that they will share the data with, you know, federal, state, and local law enforcement. So how, when, where, why they would do it, I can't attest to that. I have no idea what they're going to do.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. And the second question has to do with the engagement letter. You said it was about 6 or 7 pages long. I think you said the only thing that needs to be filled out is the last page, and that's on the association itself and the board members' individual information. What
So
are the other 6 pages?
The last page will have just somebody authorized by the board would have to sign, sign the engagement letter and return it. And then what I'll do is send in the document request list, and the document request list is just a bunch of reminders as well as, you know, telling us that you need to provide us with the people's, you know, information. So if they're on the board, you know, who are these people, and then the document that they need to provide, either whether it be that driver's license, the U.S. passport, or if we need to work through another solution.
Not trying to take up a lot of time, but is it worthwhile to see that document before we receive it?
Which document? I'm
The
sorry.
engagement letter.
It'll be forthcoming, right, Blair, in the next.
Yeah, I think what he's getting at, Margaret, it's so they're already filled out for each association. So even if he did a screen share, he'd be sharing probably some association's information that he wouldn't want to do. So it's gonna be in your inbox. It's probably the best. To be
Gotcha.
honest, Debbie's seen it. I've not even seen it yet. I've not looked at it. Mike and I
there were
talked
places
about
I had
it.
to fill out. I just wanted to be familiar.
Yeah, no, I think you
with
just have to
and
sign
ask
it.
questions now rather than later.
Yeah, I think that part's just a signature. What he sends after that will be the collection of data. So this one, you know, kind of similar to the tax returns, it's just a signature. So this one's just saying, yes, do it on our behalf. We're engaging your firm to do it. He's got all of his insurance mumbo jumbo in there to make sure he doesn't get sued, et cetera, et cetera. And then, you know, I think it's a lot of CYA stuff is what I'm gathering from the discussion he and I had.
I see. That's not the data gathering. That's just the
Correct.
engagement letter. I
Correct.
got you.
That's just to get it off
Okay.
the ground. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
And then just to kind of piggyback, I think it goes well with that, and then I'll go to those raised hands. But when you're talking about the questions, will we receive a copy of that report? It's in our engagement letter that is the deliverable that we will give you is a copy of that report, a PDF copy of that report. PBA maintains our records. Will they get a copy? I don't know, Blair. Do you want a copy?
Not particularly.
So,
Unless so here's the thought, Mike, and I don't know the answer. And maybe we'll get an answer from some attorney going forward. Is it part of the association official record? You're not involved in all this legislative mumbo jumbo that we get stuck with, but they've changed everything to where everything but the kitchen sink of each condo is now an official record. So that may be something, hold on to the copy. And if it turns out I need it, I can request it, on the association's behalf. And we'll probably do it that way. Because if we get a records request or something and they happen to list that as an item, then we're going to need a copy. So maybe maintain, and then if requested, shoot it over type thing.
And like I said, a copy will be provided to whoever we're in communication with on the board, whatever that person may be, whether it's the treasurer, the secretary, the president, or whoever it may be that engaged us, that is working with us. They will get a copy of the final product. That's a fact.
Okay, great.
And we will keep a copy with the signed engagement letter and the other documents that have been provided to do said report in our permanent file, because we consider this to be the same as like articles of incorporation since it's initial filing of it.
All right, Barb, you've got your hand up, and I think that's the last one.
A lot of people asking questions about the security and who has access and all this. So my question is, if we use Michael's service and he engaged with each of our board members, how are they providing the data to them? Is it email? Because that's not secure either. Or is there a server that we're depositing the documents to? How does that all work? Because getting the data to Michael is also a risk if people are concerned about security.
So on that regard, we have encrypted emails they can be sent by, or they can be hand delivered if they so choose. Our office is right here in St. Pete, or the United States Postal Service, which has inherent security risk as well. But any of those three vessels is as secure as we can possibly make it.
And then if we do the fill out the forms ourselves, is the FinCent, let's say it's a website, I don't really know how we would file the forms ourselves, but is it the same way where we deliver it securely to them? Like, are you delivering it to them securely?
I'm delivering it through their web portal.
Okay.
Whether or not
so we would probably do the same thing then. Okay.
All right. So we've hit a little bit over an hour, and I'm sorry for that. I try to keep it to where I don't take too much of your time, and I don't want to take too much of Mike's time. I feel like we had a good meeting. I feel like we answered a lot of questions. I know it's a lot to ask of a volunteer position, and we already ask, or your association's already asked an awful lot of you guys. But unfortunately, our hands are tied. Your hands are tied. The federal government is in this one. They're the last people we probably want to tangle with right now. So if you do it, we're going to send it to you guys, as we said. Do with it as you see fit. This is hopefully the easiest path to and the least resistance to get it done. But again, this is why I felt this webinar was very important for all board members to attend. I do thank you all very, very much that took the time to attend. We've still got 111 hanging on. I'm gonna, when I hit stop, it will then produce the recording. So I will put that again on the PBM YouTube channel. I will then share it via an email with a link directly to that YouTube channel, and I will attach Michael's presentation in PowerPoint. Actually, I'll probably convert it to PDF, so it's a little easier for folks to open. So I will provide that to everybody. So if you happen to have a friend that's a board member, or someone didn't attend, or whatever it may be, they'll get it if they are in fact a board member with us. If any of you are have been invited by one of our managers, or you're not currently a client, please let that person, whomever invited you, know that you want this information. They'll be happy to send it to you. If it's Kelly or whomever it is, they'll send you the same data. If you're coming on as a client, come October, November, December, some of you are on the call as well. You'll want to, if you want to partake, let us know. We'll make sure Mike gets your data, because what he has, I think, was as of the September 1 starts. So if you're coming on October, November, December, and you know it, or if you need to get this handled, please let Kelly or myself know. Anyway, I will wrap it up. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate your time. Thank you again, Mike. I think you did a wonderful job. I think you explained it very, very well. And certainly the questions were very much appreciated. And I think they helped everybody on the call. So again, thank you. We appreciate you. And I'm sorry. I wish this wasn't happening, but it is. So everyone have a great Labor Day, and we'll talk soon.
Great. Thanks, Blair.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Blair.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.